All right. Thanks everyone for continuing with us. This is Michael Clark, host of the CCA's Leadership Development Podcast. Going to continue on with our last segment with my guest today, James Jones, Managing Director at EY. James, this is a segment that I ask all of my guests that we go into. We talk about leadership. That's part of the point of this podcast. And when you think about people you consider to be successful leaders, what traits do they have? How do they demonstrate their leadership?
That is a very interesting question. What are some of the successful traits I believe in leadership? One, I think, you know, not being afraid to lead, and I know you shouldn't answer a question with the question or answer it with the word, but not being afraid to volunteer, to be able to share your experiences. Again, going back to saying yes, right? I think many leaders that I believe that are great leaders would not ask their team to do something without being able to do it themselves. So to me, that's extremely important. Um, Other things that I would say, leaders are great listeners who communicate up and down, right? So being able to communicate to your clients, of course, which is what many leaders do, but also to being able to communicate to your team and listen to your team. To me, that's extremely important. I think it's also, I think we kind of throw managing different items and tasks. That's great, but I think leaders are someone who are of their word. If they say that they will do something, they will do it, and they will assist others in doing it. I kind of equate leadership and service in the same aspect.
No, I like that a lot. I think there's a lot that we can unpack there as well. Um, so how do you see people demonstrate? I want to go back to the point you made about leaders listening up and down. What does that look like when someone is truly listening? I mean, it's one thing to hear what somebody's saying, right? But I don't think that's what you're saying. Although maybe there's a component of that that says that they make themselves available to be able to listen. But what does it mean in your mind for a leader to be a good listener?
So, Michael, I'm smiling because you're reminding me of a saying that my father used to say. I know you heard me, but are you listening? Right? So between the two different, even though those words are very similar, the act of hearing, yes, I heard the words that you said, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do anyway, versus listening is taking that information in, processing it, and then addressing how you may or may not use that information, but not just blindly saying, yep, I heard you, but this is what we're going to do. To me, I think I look at leaders as those that listen, and it may be that leaders can't tell you at that exact moment why they're doing certain decisions or why they made it, but they don't leave that on the table unresolved. They actually do follow back up and at the appropriate time say, here's why I think we should have gone this way or why we did go this way. If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And especially as a parent of teenage boys, the whole hearing versus listening piece hits close to home. I'm gonna have to use that line that your dad used. I can think of instances this week where I needed that one. No, I really like that because that's a tricky balance to be able to take in all of that information and listen to those different perspectives, and then actually assimilate it into a path forward, because you're not going to be able to do everything that everybody says, and you are going to have to like separate out some of the noise, but there's going to be some nuggets in there that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise that really could influence what direction you end up going.
One of the things I always say, Michael, is take a perspective, take a point, take a stand, right? It is okay to take a decision without all of the data. And I know sometimes many people are specifically in our field are like, wait, I need all of the data before I can make a decision. And I've learned through working in M&A, unfortunately, you're not going to get all of the data. You don't have enough time, but you still need to have some perspective, some point of view, some decision. Now, again, that can change, but you have to be able to allow the team and the client a way forward and be able to say, here's my perspective on how we move forward and why. It may change, but if it changes, there's a reason why and data that's going to decide that. but here's what we know now. Here's where we would go. To me, that's what good leaders do.
Yeah, some people are going to be really uncomfortable with that approach because, and like you said, and
Extremely uncomfortable.
I 100% agree with the sentiment too, that especially within our profession, we're very data driven in what we do. If you don't show me the data and can't prove it, like I'm going to have a hard time believing you. What do you tell people that need to learn this skill of being able to make decisions when maybe you don't have all of the data? Like, how do you get comfortable doing that?
Well, to me, that's the definition of being a consultant. Being a consultant, yes, you have your technical expertise, which makes you a specialist, and you are the person to call based on X, Y, and Z. But it's also about embracing ambiguity and being able to do more with less. And sometimes that's with data, right? And with data points to ensure that you're doing more, giving more guidance based on the data that you have. You just have to kind of be comfortable in being uncomfortable. That to me is one of the skill sets that leaders have.
In some ways, it's not funny enough, it's not too dissimilar to what we're asking clients to do a lot of times, which is make an informed decision, understand the risks of which direction something could go, and but making this it's the same thing, right? What you're talking about is saying here's the data we have at hand, and it might not be complete, but we're going to take a risk and go down a certain path, and we hope that that provides us an optimal outcome. But there's nothing to say, similar to like you do as an actuary. You get more data, you refine your model, you make adjustments, right? It's the
Right.
same thing.
It is the same thing. The one thing that I would say is, we are in the field of risk management. We are in the field of look of understanding ambiguity, but we have to be able to move forward and not be in analysis paralysis, right? And I think sometimes we want to say, no, I need 100% of the data. Sometimes you just don't have time for that.
It's just ironic, right? Because we're asking people to make decisions based off of incomplete facts and circumstances sometimes, and yet we ourselves as a profession are probably one of the more risk averse groups of people, and we're not as willing to necessarily take that same approach with things that we need to do, whether it's leading a team or a company or just taking the lead on something.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, if we look at, I remember years in the profession, it was how do we talk about what an actuary does differently? And part of it is we are, as an organization or as a profession, very risk averse. But I think part of it is being more risk analysis, and being able to analyze the risk to provide decision points and being able to move forward.
No, I like that. I appreciate that. So James, when you think about some of your role models when it comes to leadership, people that you've looked to over the years and said, yeah, that is somebody that I consider to be a strong leader and somebody that I want to model my own characteristics after. Who are those people? How have you tried to emulate their examples?
So there are numerous folks in my career that have helped shape who I am today. And I would not be here without them and many of the characteristics that they had. One of my first managers, he was a lead partner in the firm that I was working with. He didn't really care about what your title was. So here I was, this young kid coming out of school, working with this seasoned actuary, but he was very open to hearing what my thoughts were about the various projects. Now, yes, I wasn't the most technical actuary because I didn't have the experience there, but to be able to recognize, hey, what are some of the points that we need to be paying attention to? Again, thinking about my skill set as being broad, understanding what are some of the things we're not talking about. So I think that was one leader that I really appreciate. The other is that people recognizing that you're not going to be in a mold or you don't fit in the mold. So I've had leaders who recognize, like, listen, James, technical actuary, he's an actuary. He's probably not the most technical actuary who's up on regulation A, B, C, D, and E, but he understands the concepts and he can communicate those concepts in a way that non-lay can understand. recognizing other teams' superpower. I've had many leaders who've been able to do that. And then, last but not least, leaders who brought me in, who gave me the opportunity, and gave me the opportunity numerous times, because I can't say that I knocked it out of the park every time, but to be able to provide that opportunity, to provide feedback on what I did well and what I needed to grow on, that was very important to me, and I'm very grateful to have those individuals in my life.
No, that's excellent. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's talk about leaders within the actuarial profession, and more specifically, future leaders within our profession. What do you view as the imperatives for future leaders in our profession? What do they need to, what kind of skills do they need to be harnessing today? Again, we're talking really beyond the technical at this point. You've listed a lot of good traits that I think are very much applicable to this conversation too. But you know the world we live in, you see it. What do they need?
I would say the embracing of technology. I think the last 4 years have taught us that the way we work with each other is different. And to be able to leverage that technology that exists to continue that mentorship, be it a technical mentorship or a professional mentorship, I think is extremely important, using the technologies that exist, from our phone, from Gen AI to other items that will help you as you're moving through the profession and as you're helping your clients solve challenges. I mean, I think that is extremely important. Um, Again, the diversity of teams, recognizing that you to have teams with different superpowers. I mean, listen, I am a comic book fan, specifically the movies. And so if I think about teams like the Avengers or the Justice League, they all have different superpowers, but they're all there together to help solve the problem of the day. And I think that's one thing as leaders, as you're moving forward, to recognize that you need to build a team to make sure that all of the superpowers are accounted for.
No, I really love that idea on embracing technology, because in some ways that seems obvious, right? The technology is constantly changing, and we've been exposed to a lot more. I mean, this year alone, and the just how Chat GPT has exploded on the scene, which has made generative AI a much more not just real topic, but tangible topic for people. Um, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that embracing new ways of doing things and leveraging new technology has a place in future leadership, because it means, and I think it goes back to a lot of the other things that you talked about. It means embracing new ideas and new thoughts, and challenging the status quo. It's very easy to say, this is the way we've always done it. I don't need to improve. Like, this is working just fine, but from a technology standpoint, there's probably ways of doing things better, and it's going to continue to be that way.
And I recognize the profession that I'm in. We come from a very traditional, specifically, if I think about pension actuaries, there was a specific way of how things were done.
Mhm.
And as the technology evolved, our ways of teaching and learning have evolved also. And what I would say is that you should continue to think about that as we look at about where our talent is located, how our talent works, how our teams are formed. You know, it's weird. I can always I remember I came through the through college in the years that the internet didn't always exist. Yeah, I know I just dated myself, but I think it's very interesting to see the differences now with the new generation, which has always had certain internet-enabled tools, and how they use those tools. I think that's extremely important to recognize how you can use those tools and skills within business, and within our profession, to continue to move us forward. It's not just, okay, great, you can game, or great, you've had access, but how do you leverage that and move the profession forward and to help your clients? To me, that's super important.
Well, and a part of that too, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the one that understands the technology, but like you said, like this upcoming generation, those kids that are in high school and college and are going to be in the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to come with a knowledge base that's very different than ours. And because of that, like, again, embracing some of that diversity and saying, hey, I don't have to know it, but I want to listen to what other people say and how they see this stuff can apply. And then let's figure out what makes the most sense for us to adapt and deploy.
And that doesn't mean that knowing the technical aspects of something is now less than, or you don't need that anymore. You still need the technical aptitude. You still need to
Absolutely.
understand the concepts of what need to happen. I think where I'm going with this though is using the tools and the teams to find a more effective and efficient way of doing it so that you can look at other challenges that may be coming around the corner.
So James, this has been excellent. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoy all of our conversations, but this one's been fun. It's been different than our normal conversations that you and I have. If I had to, and just looking at some of the notes that I've made as we've been talking here, I think if I could sum up our conversation in these different segments that we've recorded today, it's don't say no, which is now the James Jones, Nancy Reagan moment. Don't say no. Try Peruvian food if you haven't, and find ways to embrace diversity in all forms and fashions, not just people, but technology, and that is a key to success.
The only thing I'd add to that, Michael, is something that my great grandmother would tell me, which is live life happy. So as you're going through this, many times we talk about work life balance or work life, separation and all that stuff. I think it's important that whatever you decide to do or how you do it, you want to make sure you're living life happy.
That is a good way to end. And so I want to thank James Jones, managing director at EY, for being my guest today on the CCA's Leadership Development Podcast. The leadership development community is open to any actuary. You can reach out to the CCA to join that and be able to participate in some of the other events and activities that we have going on there. I want to thank CCA staff for helping to organize today's event. We actually had, normally Shannon Peterson is helping us behind the scenes today. Shannon had something come up. So I very much appreciate Marie Shaw stepping in and making this possible for James and I to have this conversation today. Join us for upcoming CCA events. Follow us online on social media and our website. James, thanks again. I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you so much, Michael, for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.